Manuel Cruz, Executive Director for the Rio Grande Valley Development Council.
Manny, we heard today in your strategic plan the Transit Authority is one of your priorities, and now at today's meeting we've learned you're trying to pull in some money to help with that. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, first and foremost, before we engage into the creating a regional transit authority, we must assess the situation of how we get there. So one of the main components is to do a feasibility study, and so luckily MPO has made available some funds for regional feasibility studies. So we're going to submit our application to conduct a feasibility study on the RTA, Regional Transit Authority.
What's your time frame there?
Depends on the MPO's timeline, but it's coming up in February. That's when the applications are due, the first week, and so we already have a draft in place. So we're about to submit that, and so depending on the grant award, because it'll be through the MPO or maybe TxDOT or the federal government, so they'll determine what timeline once we receive approval. If we receive approval, they'll provide us with a timeline for the study to get done.
And at this stage, you're not sure how much money you might be able to get hold of?
Well, right now, I think there's a limit that the MPO put. I think it's $330,000 per project. But if they get limited applications, and they see there's a few that could afford to get more funding, they will allocate more funding to those projects. And we have two projects actually, one for the RTA and the other one for another study that we're planning, a transit-oriented development study, feasibility study. So we're hoping that they can combine both and we can receive over $600,000.
If you get that funding for the Transit Authority study, when will the study take place and when will it be finished?
It's going to be a process. Once we receive the award notice or selected and then the award notice, we'll be working with the funding agency to establish a timeline on the feasibility study. But historically, maybe within a year or less. That's typically how they function. So this is a regional study, so or two in nature. So it might take a year to assess the complete study.
And would that funding be enough for the entire study, or is that part of the funding and you're going to be looking elsewhere as well?
Well, that's part of the funding because, as you know, Willacy County is not part of the MPO, and so we need to make sure that they're included as well. And so we will be looking for additional funds to be able to include Willacy County in the study.
And why is the study important to you?
Well, the study is important because it's going to identify whether it's feasible to create a regional transit authority because it will assess the economic impact that it'll bring to the region, and most importantly, identify the potential source of funding that we can target, or maybe there's more than one because, as you know, the tax is already capped, and so we can't focus primarily on that. We need to look at other, and that's what the study will analyze and figure out what other streams of funding, study funding there'll be.
And we heard today that in your strategic plan, one of your top 4 priorities is the Transit Authority. That must tell us that there is a lot of support around this room from the membership of the COG, that the Transit Authority is important, and there's buy-in from the different communities that make up the COG.
Yes, obviously, everybody's in support. I haven't heard yet any negatives, negative comments on that, but luckily, through our board president, Norma Sepulveda, and various other supporting elected officials, such as the judge, through his committees, is very supportive on that. And thus far, we have not heard any negative comments on that. So hopefully, the flow will continue, and we'll make it happen.
And because in our interviews with you, and specifically the last interview, you explained how much more money is available if you have a transit authority. The opportunity to pull in more money for transit is just so much greater. And you contrasted the valley, how much the valley spends at the moment with Corpus Christi, and it's sort of effectively the valley's been left behind.
Yeah, and that's another component that the feasibility study will assess. how much money would we collect if we would transition to regional transit authority.
So the legislative session is underway, the 89th legislature is underway. Does the legislature play a role in any of this? Is the COG one of their agenda items for the session to promote and look for extra funding from the legislature for the authority?
Well, at this point in time, we need to get the data together, and that's what the feasibility study is for. And then after that, we can present it to the legislature, because they are a key component in this whole process, as well as obviously our local elected officials.
Anything else you'd like to say about the Transit Authority?
Nope.
Thank you so
Yes.
much for today's interview.
Yes, sir. Thank you.